Hello everyone, I'm your hostess with the mostest 8-second gaming, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the best weapons that you should be using in Season 15. We are on a different map and we did see some new weapon changes coming into the season, so you might be wondering which weapon should you be running, and by the end of this video you will understand. Outplayed records highlights of your games completely automatically. It knows exactly when something exciting happens, and it then saves it so you can brag about it to your friends and how much better you are than them. It works for Apex, Valorant, Overwatch, and hundreds of other games. You can choose to record the full gaming session, every match, or only highlights. And there's also a manual record button, so you've got complete freedom. Oh, and that's not all. It also has a built-in video editor, so you can trim things and share them. Seriously, it's much better than any other recording software out there. Outplayed is completely free and you guys will love it, so click the link in the description right now and download it. But okay, with that out of the way, let's hop into these weapons, and the first thing that I want to talk about is the care package weapons. Now, they will not be in this tier because the care package weapons are in a tier of their own. They're all really good, they all have their separate ups and downs, so they're not going to be in the actual tier list. This is more of a floor loot weapon tier list. So with that being said, let's hop into the D tier, and the only gun finding itself here is the P2020. Now the P20 is out of the crafter and it's back on floor loot, and it's back being just its mediocre self. With the removal of the hammer point hop up, it doesn't have any saving grace. It's one of those guns where that if you have a fast trigger finger and you can hit all those shots, you can do some damage, but other than that, it doesn't really have any range to it. It's not really versatile. It's more of a light mag holder until you find something better while you're running around off drop. But that's it for the D tier, so now let's hop into the C tier, and the guns finding themselves here are the Mozambique, the L-Star, and the R99. Now the Mozambique is pretty consistent, and if you're hitting those 45s over and over, it can be pretty good. But like the P20, it did lose the hammer point hop up, so there's no real damage oomph once you break those shields, and you're really relying on hitting 45 every single time. Without the hammer points though, you're definitely going to be dropping this for one of the other shotguns when you find it, so C tier it is. Now for the L-Star, it did receive some buffs at the start of the season, but it doesn't really have the consistency or range or just really damage output in anything other than close range to be viable. It also does still have some pretty big projectiles, so you're kind of blinding yourself whenever you're using it, and you're more than likely just going to say, hey Jesus, take the wheel while I spray and pray. The L-Star used to be one of the most dominant guns, but it did receive a bunch of nerfs that did take it out of meta, and right now I just don't see a spot for it in the meta. And the same kind of goes with the R99. It does not have the damage output that everyone thinks it does. Way back in the day, it used to be good, but that was like 3 years ago. Even though it did get buffed at the start of the season, we saw one extra bullet being added into the blue and purple mags, it still does not have the total damage output that an SMG should have. Every single SMG is better than this, and pretty much every single light weapon other than the P20 is better than this as well. There's no spot for this in the meta, you guys have to let this go. And that is why it is in C tier. But that's it for the C tier, so let's talk about our B tier. The weapons finding themselves here are the Sentinel, the Spitfire, the Alternator, the Devotion, the Hemlock, the Prowler, and the Peacekeeper. Starting things off, we have the Sentinel. Now on this map, it is very sniper lane heavy. There are a lot of wide open spots, but where the Sentinel falls short is the fact that it does take quite a long time to rechamber a bullet and then shoot again. Even though it does now have the Deadeye tempo hop up built into it, it still does not have the damage output where you can just consistently shoot at somebody. Every time I'm being shot at by a Sentinel, I know that I have quite a bit of time to move from cover to cover when they're shooting at me. There's a lot of downtime between bullets that other sniper rifles and even the marksman rifles don't have. Though when it is charged up and the buffs that it did receive to the charge up this season, it does hit pretty hard if you're able to get those headshots off. But those are few and far between, so it's kind of a mid-tier weapon right now, and that is why it's in B tier. But one of the weapons that moved into the crafter is the Spitfire, and that's our next gun on this tier list. Now the Spitfire does have a huge mag capacity, and when you're shooting this gun, you can basically shoot until the next game starts. You never really have to reload this gun in a fight, and that is a huge bonus for it. But it doesn't have a lot of up close DPS potential, so if somebody gets in close range with you, you're falling kind of behind, and in other medium to long range engagements, it does also get out DPS. The only hope with this gun really is you're shooting so many bullets at somebody that you're able to just spray and pray them down. But the huge fall off for it is now in the crafter, and I don't think anybody's really going to go to the crafter to make a Spitfire when there's just so many better options on floor loot. With all the nerfs that it has received, this gun really isn't meta defining anymore. Like a couple seasons ago, this gun in the crafter would have been fantastic, but I definitely think that this is going to be one of the splits that just nobody crafts any of the weapons. I honestly did teeter putting this into C tier, but I think with the entire mag capacity and just the total amount of damage you can pump out with it, it does have some redeeming factors and why it's in B. But now let's move into the next weapon, and that is the alternator. Now the alternator is a fantastic beginner friendly weapon. If you're new to the game, this is definitely a gun that you should be looking to run. It does have a pretty decent time to kill, it's fairly stable, but the only thing that does drop this weapon off is it's not really that good. It does classify as an SMG, but up close and personal, you're getting out DPS by pretty much every single other SMG. And in the medium to long range engagements, you're probably going to get gunned down by an assault rifle. Now, it does have the redeeming factor of being super stable and not really having too much recoil. So if the person that you're shooting at you doesn't have good recoil control, misses their bullets, you do have a good opportunity to kill them with how stable this weapon is. But that is relying on somebody else missing their shots, and you can never really do that in a game like this because, you know, it's just not a reliable factor. So that is why I have the alternator in B tier. Moving on to the next weapon though, we have the Devotion, and once again, a weapon that used to be fantastic is now just kind of mediocre. Turbocharges are very rare. Out of all the games that I've played this split so far, I've only found like 1 or 2, so you do have that. So not only are the turbocharges rare, but there is also that new nerf that came into place this season where you get -1 damage on every bullet when you do equip a turbo. And without the turbo, the Devotion just doesn't have the wind up time to kill that it should, so you do need a turbo, but you can't find one, and it does nerf it, so again, it's just kind of a mediocre gun right now. Now, keeping with the trend of guns that used to be really good but are now just in the middle of the pack, we have the Hemlock. Now, I see a lot of people talking about how amazing the Hemlock is. They say it's so good, but I can't see it. Now, I play in fairly high tier lobbies, and I almost never see anybody running a Hemlock. It's very rare to find somebody. And that is because the damage potential just isn't there. If you're hitting full 3 bursts on somebody, yes, you can absolutely shred them. But it's very rare with somebody that's strafing and moving around to actually be able to hit those triple bursts. And also the Hemlock does fall off in the medium to long range engagements. And when you're getting into those long ranges, when you start to get into those long ranges, it's a little bit harder to hit those bursts and you're only really going to be hitting 1 shot out of them. And before you guys comment, I know you can put the Hemlock into single fire, but you can do that with the 301 and the Flatline also, and those have anvil receivers this season, so it's just a lot better. The Hemlock right now is just a mid-tier weapon. You guys are going to have to deal with it. Now the next gun is a little bit hard for me to place, and that is the Prowler. Now the Prowler has an insanely fast time to kill when you are able to hit all of those bursts. But the fact that the Prowler is very inconsistent for most players is the reason that I have it in B tier. It takes a certain type of player to run the Prowler and be super effective at it. And I know a lot of people are going to say that this isn't a thing, but aim assist does help with the Prowlers. And controller players, you guys need to be abusing this thing in close range because it absolutely shreds. And with the consistency of aim assist, you guys can go pretty hard with it. But again, it's very inconsistent when you're learning it and for most players, so you know, I can't put it any higher, so I have to put it in B tier. And the last gun in B tier is the other gun that's in the crafting rotation this split, and that is the Peacekeeper. Now the Peacekeeper didn't receive any damage changes, so it's still going to be pretty good if you actually want to craft it, but with the Eva and the Mastiff both on floor loot, I can't see anybody actually wanting to craft this. Mastiffs and Evas are pretty abundant. I find one almost every single time I'm looking for one. And you know, even if you can't find one, the SMGs this season are ridiculously strong, so there's no real reason to want to craft a Peacekeeper unless you really like them. But that is why I have the Peacekeeper in B tier, because yeah, it's strong, but I don't think there's any reason to actually run this weapon. But okay, B tier, done. Moving on to A tier. For the guns at A tier, we have the Longbow, the Havoc, the 30-30, the Triple Take, and the Volt. Now, like I said with the Sentinel, this map has a ton of sniper lanes. There's a lot of really open areas, and the Longbow can abuse that perfectly because it does have a pretty good fire rate. It has the Skull Piercer to do some nasty damage to headshots, but the thing is, it does have some pretty wonky bullet drop if you're not used to it. It does feel more like a marksman rifle, but it doesn't have the marksman rifle fire rate, so it does feel kind of wonky in those areas, and it's not broken enough to make it into the S tier. It's good, it's strong. If you're hitting those headshots with the Skull Piercer, you're going to decimate somebody, but again, it's just not broken enough to push it into the S tier. Now, next up we have the Havoc. Now, the Havoc is extremely good. It has a very fast time to kill, but again, turbocharges, very scarce on this map, and they did receive a little bit of a nerf. I don't really think it's going to make the Havoc any less strong than it is, but with the turbochargers being as scarce as they are and the damage reduction on them, it's not really going to be somebody's first pick. The other ARs, the marksman rifles, they're just so much better right now, and I just can't justify putting the Havoc into S tier because it's just not broken this season. Now, next weapons are the 30-30 and the triple take, and I'm going to talk about these guys together because it's kind of the same thing. I definitely thought that the 30-30 was going to be a lot stronger of a weapon. I still really do like using it, but the charge up time on it does make it a little bit weaker on this map because, again, people can move from cover to cover when you're trying to charge it up. And the same thing with the triple take. Even though it did get a buff with its choke up time, it's just not as good as it should be. They are in good spots though. These guns do feel pretty balanced, and I don't think there should be any changes to them because I think they're in good spots. These guns do feel how weapons should be in Apex. They're not broken, but they're not undervalued. They're not broken, but they're not useless at the same time. If you pick one up, people are going to be like, oh hey, he's using this gun, but then they get hit by you and you're going to be like, oh hey, he's using this gun. So that is why I have these two in A tier. And the last gun in A tier is the Volt. Now the Volt did receive some changes at the start of the season, and I know that a lot of people are going to be like, hey, why do you have this in A tier when it should be in S tier? But this gun as an SMG is more effective in medium ranges. When you start to get up close, the car just absolutely decimates it in time to kill, and you're going to be losing those engagements pretty much every single time, especially. But in these medium engagements, with the nerfs that it did receive, it still does feel strong, but it's not broken tier strong. You're still going to be getting outgunned by an AR, probably even maybe a marksman rifle if they're hitting headshots because of these nerfs, but hey, it's still good in those engagements, it's just not broken, and that's why it's in A tier. S tier guns are the ones that are absolutely stupidly strong, and the Volt just doesn't feel like that anymore. But okay, what are the S tier guns? What are the strong weapons that you should be looking to pick up? Well, right now we actually have a pretty balanced weapon pool in terms of broken guns, so there's quite a few of them. First off, we have the charge rifle, then we have the car, the Mastiff, the Eva, the Flatline, the R301, the Scout, and the Wingman. Now starting off with the charge rifle, this gun is absolutely ridiculously busted. You guys should definitely be running this if you enjoy sniper rifles. Like I've mentioned before, lots of open sniper lanes, tons of areas where you can absolutely abuse this weapon, and if you want to snag some kills without even having to put yourself in danger, this is the weapon to do so. It's hit scan, it pumps out a ton of damage, and I know that there is damage drop off, but most of the time you don't even feel it. I use this weapon a lot in ranked and tournaments, and I always love doing it because, you know, you kind of feel cheap while doing it, but it's a good feeling when you do. Definitely a weapon that you guys should be looking to run this season though. But with that being said, let's move into the next gun, and that is the Car SMG. This gun absolutely shreds in close range. You have a lot of flexibility with the attachments, you have a lot of flexibility with the ammo that you're running, it decimates in close range. It does not have the laser sight or the barrel stabilizer, so you do have to get kinda used to the recoil, but once you do, you really start to feel this gun. If you are an SMG enjoyer, this is the one that you should be running this season. Now we are still in a pretty shotgun heavy meta, so with the Mastiff being back on floor loot, this is the one that's taking over the PK, and me personally, I always thought that the Mastiff was more consistent. It doesn't hit as hard as the PK, but it does hit more consistently, and consistency is key in a lot of Apex fights. Now I do personally prefer having the Mastiff on floor loot, but it doesn't have anything to do with this tier list, it's just my personal opinion. The PK would be an S tier, the Mastiff's an S tier, and hey, the Eva's also here. The Eva's our next weapon. The Eva is just ridiculously strong if you are a W key warrior. If you like running people down, chasing them down, making them pay for being in your lobby, the Eva's the shotgun for you. The amount of DPS that you can pump out extremely quickly with a purple bolt on this gun is so nutty. And the Eva still has the stock, so in a fight you can ready and stow this gun at a moment's notice. It is a little bit weaker if you start to get away from your target, but again, this is the W key person's weapon. You want to be up in their face, you want to be up close and personal, and the Eva is the weapon for you. Now we have two ARs in this tier, the Flatline and the R301. And these guns have always kind of been battling back and forth throughout the entirety of Apex for which is the best weapon in terms of the assault rifles. They're both really good, they're both super strong, you can't really put one above the other. I don't really play Valorant, but you know, I hear a lot of people talking about the Phantom or the Vandal, and I think it's kind of like that, how it's more just personal opinion, but you know, that's like it is for the 301 and the Flatline. And with the Anvil receivers back this season, it doesn't matter which range you're in, just throw that baby onto single fire and make them pay for peeking you. And speaking of single shot weapons that can make people pay, let's talk about the Scout. Now when the Scout did come back to floor loot last season, I wasn't super impressed with it to begin with, but boy was I wrong. This weapon is ridiculous. You can chunk somebody for so much health when they even only peek you for just a split second. This gun is really strong. It's the best marksman rifle right now. You guys should definitely be using this if you are a marksman rifle enjoyer. But the last weapon we have on this tier list is the Wingman. Now the Wingman did have a few changes over the last couple seasons. It was kind of in a weird limbo of, is it good, is it not? But we have actually kind of found its spot in the meta, and you know, surprise, surprise, it's still ridiculously strong. The sniper ammo changes were a little bit weird, but you know, you don't really notice it once you actually pick up a decent amount of sniper ammo. You can run 4 stacks and be good for the rest of the game as long as you are somewhat safe with your shots. Even though it doesn't have the boosted loader hop up anymore, it still has the skull piercer, you still have a good hop up attachment for it, and it does have the pistol strafe speed, so you do have that movement built into it. The Wingman's still ridiculously strong. It's still one of the best guns in the game. If you liked it before, you're still gonna like it now. But that is where I'm placing all these weapons on the tier list for this split. If you guys would change any of the positions, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know what you guys think. Also, if you guys are enjoying Season 15 so far and you guys want to stay up to date with the latest and greatest Apex Legends tips, tricks, and news, don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button. We have a ton of bangers coming out for Season 15. You do not want to miss them. Thank you guys all for watching. Once again, I'm 8 Second Gaming, and I will see you in the next one.